Fortnite OG flopped, but why? I mean, a year and a half ago, Epic Games released OG Fortnite for just 1 month and reached record-breaking numbers. So how did it fall off so badly? Well, first off, when Epic released the temporary game mode in November of 2023, many players benefited from the heightened sense of nostalgia. What made this mode so special was that it lasted only for a month, which helped build enough hype. The limited time nature made this mode feel like a rare and special event, and everyone wanted a chance to experience it while they could. Many players returned simply because it was a chance to relive their favorite memories of a time when Fortnite felt fresher, simpler, and more fun. However, while the permanent release of Fortnite OG sounded too good to be true later in 2024, it quickly backfired as many players lost interest in the mode. But this wasn't the only reason why Fortnite OG failed. In November of 2023, a lot more people were interested in seeing how Fortnite would implement its OG content, graphics, and weapons into the game. As this increased hype, many players decided to load up the game again. They were eager to experience the classic map and weapons, and perhaps even relive the glory days of Fortnite with its original Battle Royale vibe. The excitement was huge, but by 2024, many OG players began to dislike the current game mechanics implemented in Fortnite OG, such as sliding, sprinting, turbo building, and the new, more polished graphics. What made OG Fortnite special was its simplicity. It was a time when Fortnite was all about quick reflexes, basic building strategies, and a less polished yet vibrant experience. As the game evolved, it became more refined, and some of the changes were not well received by the original player base. Sliding, sprinting, and turbo building had become core elements of Fortnite, and the smoothness of graphics, while visually impressive, didn't match the original aesthetic that many OG players loved. It seemed like Fortnite had lost some of its raw charm. For some, the simplicity that Fortnite OG represented felt more engaging and less complicated than the modern version of the game, and this contributed to the loss of interest. Now, of course, it is impossible for Fortnite to replicate OG Fortnite exactly with their new player base, especially considering the tech advances and changes in gaming culture over the years. However, Fortnite could have prevented this issue by releasing the OG experience again as a limited time mode instead of transitioning it to a permanent fixture. The longer the game mode was available, the more time OG players had to reflect on it, and this caused many to lose interest. The once thrilling feeling of revisiting the game faded, and soon the hype wore off. Another major issue that arose in Fortnite OG was the introduction of skill-based matchmaking and bots. Although skill-based matchmaking had been implemented into Fortnite for years to create a more balanced experience, its inclusion in the OG mode drew backlash from the community. Many OG players felt that this feature fundamentally changed the game in a negative way. In OG Fortnite, there was a certain chaotic and unpredictable nature to the game. The randomness of each match made it exciting and engaging, and anyone, regardless of skill, could get a win. It was a fun, all-out battle royale where you never quite knew what was going to happen. But with skill-based matchmaking in place, the experience became a lot more structured. Players were matched with others of similar skill, meaning that the chaos and unpredictability of the game was reduced. Many OG players were also placed into games with bots. While bots were introduced with good intentions to help less experienced players, many experienced OG players felt that it detracted from the sense of authenticity that they once enjoyed. The presence of bots made the game feel less like a challenge and more like a repetitive grind. The problem with skill-based matchmaking and bots was that it created an environment where the high-risk, high-reward nature of the game no longer existed. Players can no longer expect a fast-paced, action-packed match where anything could happen. Instead, they found themselves in matches that felt more structured, more predictable, and less fun. Perhaps one of the biggest reasons that Fortnite OG flopped in 2024 was that the player base had changed drastically over the years. When you really think about it, Fortnite has been around for almost 8 years, and in that time, the player base has shifted and evolved. OG Fortnite really only lasted from 2017 to 2018, meaning that so much has changed in the years since then, and it's almost impossible to truly bring it back in its original form. After the initial Fortnite boom, many of the OG players moved on to other games as they weren't as invested in Fortnite's continuous evolution. A large portion of Fortnite's player base consisted of people who were not part of the original Fortnite community. These newer players had never experienced the simpler version of Fortnite that the OG mode tried to replicate. For them, Fortnite OG felt outdated. They were more accustomed to the polished mechanics and advanced features that had been added to Fortnite over the years. For many new players, the complexity and modern gameplay systems of Fortnite were what kept them engaged, and the simpler, older version didn't have the same appeal. On the other hand, the older player base, those who had once been so attached to Fortnite, had moved on to different titles. They had been pulling into other games like Apex Legends, Warzone, and Valorant. While some had enjoyed their time with Fortnite OG, they were not as interested in revisiting it in the same way. The connection of Fortnite OG simply wasn't as strong as it had been during its peak. Although Epic Games tried to make Fortnite OG more accessible to a wider range of players, they faced another issue: the removal of the building mechanic. For many OG players, what made Fortnite stand out was the ability to build structures on the fly during the game. Building gave players a unique strategic advantage and allowed for creative plays that couldn't be replicated in other battle royales. When Fortnite introduced its zero build mode, it was seen as a way to give players who weren't familiar with the building mechanics a chance to enjoy the game without feeling overwhelmed. However, for many OG players, zero build Fortnite wasn't what they signed up for. The building aspect was a core part of the Fortnite experience, and by removing it, it changed the essence of what made the game special. The zero build mode didn't capture the excitement and fast-paced action of building on the fly. It removed the skill element that made the game feel unique, and this left many players unsatisfied. OG players were looking for the chaotic fun of early Fortnite, but zero build Fortnite only offered a more generic battle royale experience. Even though it was popular with a segment of the player base, it didn't fully cater to the nostalgia that many OG players hoped for. Another significant factor in Fortnite OG's failure was the increased competition from other battle royale games. When Fortnite first exploded onto the scene, it was the clear frontrunner in the genre. The battle royale genre was new, and Fortnite offered a fresh take with its building mechanics and its cartoony graphics. However, by 2024, there were plenty of other games competing for players' attention. Apex Legends, Warzone, and Valorant all offered unique gameplay mechanics and kept their communities engaged with regular updates. These games evolved with their player bases, incorporating new features and innovations that kept their experiences fresh and exciting. Meanwhile, Fortnite struggled to keep up. Even though Fortnite OG tried to implement mechanics from other battle royales, such as vehicle combat, respawn mechanics, and more advanced weapons, the game still couldn't fully capture the same feeling. These features often felt tacked on rather than integrated into the game in a way that felt natural and exciting. Other battle royale games, which had refined their mechanics over time, were simply more attractive to competitive players, and many OG players found themselves gravitating toward newer titles that offered a more polished experience. One of the key elements that contributed to Fortnite's success during its early years was the streaming culture that surrounded the game. Creators like Tfue, Myth, Daquan, and Ninja were integral to Fortnite's rise. They brought millions of viewers into the game and made Fortnite a cultural phenomenon. But by the time Fortnite OG returned in 2024, many of these influencers had moved on to other games. The absence of these influential figures made Fortnite feel less exciting and less alive. Without these streamers and content creators regularly playing and showcasing the game, Fortnite lost some of the excitement that it had during its peak. For OG players, part of the enjoyment of the game came from watching these content creators perform insane plays, showcase new strategies, and simply have fun. Without them, Fortnite OG didn't feel as dynamic or as fresh. Ultimately, Fortnite OG flopped not because of one single factor, but because of a combination of reasons that span from gameplay mechanics to changes in the player base, competition from other games, and the loss of cultural magic that Fortnite once had. Fortnite OG was a nostalgia-fueled experiment that ultimately didn't live up to the expectations of many players. The game had evolved too much, and the landscape of gaming had changed drastically. While Epic Games deserves credit for attempting to bring back the classic Fortnite experience, it's clear that some things just cannot be replicated. The original magic of Fortnite, its chaotic fun, and its rise to fame during 2017 to 2018 was tied to a specific moment in gaming history that cannot be recreated in 2024. Fortnite OG failed because it wasn't just a game, it was an experience. And experiences like that can't always be repeated. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.